Part 27. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 261. The next day, Chu Qinghuang got up extra early. It wasn't even bright outside yet, but the hot wind was already blowing in through the window. July is approaching, and now we have entered the hottest season of the year. The sun is shining brightly during the day, and there is no coolness at all at night. Fortunately, there were ice cubes in the princess's bedroom to cool down the heat, and there was a naturally cool pillow beside her, so Chu Qinghuang slept well at night. Your body is really strange. Chu Qinghuang raised her hand and touched Fu Kang's neck. The skin under the clothes was just like ordinary people's, with nothing abnormal. However, when she fell asleep at night, her whole body felt cold. I have a disease. Precious. Fu Kang stopped dressing her and raised his head slightly, revealing his slender and smooth neck, allowing his master to touch her more smoothly. Chu Qinghuang glanced at him, took back her hand, and began to change her clothes. When she sat in front of the dressing table and let Jinlan and Minjiao comb her hair and paint her eyebrows, Fu Kang stood aside and watched, paying special attention. Because his eyes were so focused, Chu Qinghuang could ignore it even if he wanted to. She raised her eyes and glanced at him casually. You want to learn? Fu Kang nodded. A 7-foot man learns how to comb his hair and draw his eyebrows. Chu Qinghuang's expression was subtle. You are really promising. Fu Kang pursed his lips and remained silent for a moment without making any excuses. He continued to watch Minjiao and Jinlan's movements. Fortunately, the two maids were very determined and were not surprised when he stared at them like this. They took care of the eldest princess's hair and makeup step by step, and even picked out a hairpin set with rubies from the jewelry box. Chu Qinghuang put it on. His Highness never liked wearing these before. All these gems and hairpins have been wasted here, Jinlan said with a smile. His Highness is still young, so he should wear some fresh and noble jewelry. Chu Qinghuang didn't like it before because she thought it would be a hindrance to use force, but now she has fewer opportunities to do it herself, and it doesn't matter if she wears 1 or 2 hairpins, so she left it to the two of them to take care of it. After working like this for half an hour, Chu Qinghuang took Fu Kang out of Dongshang Pavilion. Your Highness, Chu Ling Chuan came in a hurry, stopped Chu Qinghuang on the corridor of the princess mansion, and handed him a letter from the flying pigeon. This is the news from the King of War. Chu Qinghuang took it and took a look. Second brother can arrive tomorrow. Yes. Tisk, Chu Qinghuang said indifferently. I said that Chu Tianqiu's title of prince can still be kept for 3 days. It seems that he is still promoted. Tomorrow, I will demote him from prince to county king. No, Chu Ling Chuan coughed lightly. Your Highness can do it today. The King of War said that the documents for the envoy's visit can be delivered to Ziki today. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows. Second brother is not bad, he really makes me look good. The King of War is indeed thinking about his Highness, but this one, Chu Ling Chuan turned his eyes to Fu Kang. Your Highness may want to think carefully about how to explain to the King of War. Chu Qinghuang frowned. Explain what? Just as Chu Ling Chuan was about to speak, Chu Qinghuang said again, forget it, I will go to the palace to sign a life and death certificate with those people who are looking for death. We will discuss other matters when I come back. Chu Ling Chuan then took 2 steps back to make way for Chu Qinghuang to pass first. After getting on the carriage, Chu Qinghuang looked at Fu Kang's handsome and delicate face. My second brother is coming. Fu Kang was startled. His master's second brother, the war king of Dongling, commanded the power of 400,000 soldiers and horses in Dongling. He was the most noble prince under one person in Dongling and above 10,000 people. Fu Kang became nervous for no reason. Entering the palace and going to court, the east side slowly turned white. The morning has begun. Chu Qinghuang walked into the silent hall and bowed to the emperor. Father. His Majesty the Emperor, who was sitting on the dragon throne, hummed majestically, "I have asked Chen Hai to draw up a contract." Qing Huang, after thinking about it for a night, "Do you think you can go back on it?" Chu Qing Huang turned to look at Chu Tianqiu. Did the second emperor regret it? Chu Tianqiu was full of confidence and smiled lightly. A man keeps his promise, how can he go back on his words so easily? The civil and military officials on the left and right sides of the main hall looked at each other in confusion. Those who knew the situation were tacitly understanding, while those who did not know were confused. Qing Huang promised 3 months ago that envoys would arrive at Ziki from Dongling before July to avoid paying tribute this year, the emperor said calmly, explaining the ins and outs and content of the contract in a few words. It is now the end of June. July. The eldest princess will make a bet with King Xian within 3 days. All my dear friends will bear witness to me today. When the ministers heard this, a look of understanding appeared on their faces. I see. In the past 2 days, there have been rumors in the imperial city, and rumors about the emperor and Phoenix have spread. I think His Highness Prince Xian is a little out of control. The emperor ordered in a deep voice, Chen Hai. Chen Hai lowered his eyebrows in response, and then took a step forward, unfolding a bright yellow contract with both hands. Her Royal Highness the eldest princess offered to bet the title of eldest princess and the military power of the silver armored army. If the Dongling envoy does not fulfill the promise within 3 days, upon arrival, the eldest princess will relinquish all privileges and no longer interfere with the affairs of the court. The bet between His Royal Highness King Xian and Uncle Qin is the prince's title and the power in the court. If the Dongling envoy arrives within 3 days, then His Royal Highness Prince Xian will be crowned the prince and Uncle Qin will be relieved of all his duties in the court. The officials were in an uproar. This. The ministers discussed one after another, is the stake too high? One is the eldest princess and the other is a prince, how can this be used as a bet? Yeah, it's just nonsense. Chu Qing Huang listened to the ministers whispering to each other, with a calm expression on his face. Chu Tianqiu also maintained his composure, with an expression as if the mountain was collapsing in front of him without changing his expression. Uncle Qin, the emperor's eyes turned slightly, do you have anything else to say? Uncle Qin walked out of the group of ministers and bowed, saying, Your Majesty, I have no objection. In that case the emperor turned around and ordered, Chen Hai, let them each have a look, and then sign and seal. Yes. Chen Hai walked down holding the bright yellow silk brocade used for imperial edicts, and bowed to present it to Chu Qing Huang. The contract was written on the bright yellow brocade, which showed the solemnity of the specifications and the rigor of the meaning, and no one could take it lightly. Chu Qing Huang took it and read it quickly. There was no problem. She reached out to take the pen from the jade plate brought by the eunuch next to her, dipped it lightly in ink, and calmly wrote her name. After writing her name, she put down the pen, took out her seal, dipped it in cinnabar and stamped it. All the actions were done calmly like flowing water, without any pause or hesitation. Chu Tianqiu was shocked when he saw this. Chu Qing Huang was too confident. Did she know what this bet meant? The hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The civil and military officials had different expressions, but they all watched this bet quietly. The original absurdity became serious because of the emperor's approval. No one dared to scold it at this time. Is the second brother scared? Chu Qing Huang raised his eyes and looked at Chu Tianqiu. Do you want to regret it? Chu Tianqiu's smile was a little dry. How could it be? I'll sign it now. The same process, different seals. After stamping his own seal, Chu Tianqiu's palms sweated uncontrollably. He tried to remain calm and watched Chen Hai hand the contract to Qin Qiuaju, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. Outside the imperial city, a fast horse broke the tranquility of the early morning like lightning. After the city gate opened at dawn, it was the first to gallop into the imperial city. Duh. 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 Qin Qiuaju silently signed his name on the contract and stamped it. The contract was established, and the bet took effect. Chen Hai turned around and walked up the stairs, presenting the contract to the emperor. Report. A loud and high voice suddenly sounded, breaking the oppressive silence in the hall. The Dongling envoy handed over the document. Please review it, Your Majesty. After the voice fell, the whole hall was silent. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 262. The expression on Chu Tianqiu's face became stiff and pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. As if he had been greatly stimulated, he turned around and looked outside the hall in a dull manner. The ministers were also shocked. Dongling envoy. Did they hear it correctly? The emperor perked up and said, Xian. A young and capable man in black military uniform walked up to the main hall quickly, ignoring the astonished, shocked, and suspicious eyes of the civil and military officials in the court, and bowed slightly. I have met His Majesty the Emperor of Ziki. Who is there in the palace? The young general is Rong Chen, the left general of Dongling Longxiang Iron Cavalry. According to my emperor's decree, he accompanied His Royal Highness the War King on his visit to Ziki. His Majesty the Emperor breathed a long sigh of relief and subconsciously turned to look at Chu Qinghuang, only to see that her expression was calm and indifferent, no different from usual. War King, King Zhenbei was surprised and stared at this handsome man. You mean the Dongling War King is about to arrive in Ziki? Rong Chen nodded, that's right. Uncle Qin still couldn't believe it. He came in person. Rong Chen frowned and glanced at him. Is it difficult to understand what I said? Although his knowledge and writing skills are not very good, he is not so bad that he can't even understand his words. The king of Zhenbei was shocked. As a general in charge of military power, who dares not to recognize Dongling War King? He was the most powerful general with the power of 400,000 soldiers and horses. He was deeply respected and trusted by the emperor. The cavalry he personally trained was said to be invincible in the world. Whether he was invincible has not yet been verified. After all, ever since Tanglin annexed South Vietnam more than 10 years ago and became the overlord of the world, no one has dared to provoke Tanglin, let alone send troops, and even dare not pay tribute. But even though there has been no battle for many years, Dongling has never slacked off in military training in recent years. Its strong and prosperous economy is enough to support an army of 1 million people. Now the Dongling War King is personally visiting Ziki? Uncle Qin's eyes were tightly locked on the handsome features of the man in front of him, and his voice was cold and full of doubts. Who can prove your identity? Rong Chen frowned, as if he thought his question was stupid. Do you want to read my general's token and clearance document? Uncle Qin choked. I also find it unbelievable, Chu Tianqiu said calmly, his hands hanging by his sides were already sweating. I just signed the contract, and the documents from the Dongling envoy were delivered. Such a coincidence, I have to suspect that someone among them deliberately arranged a show. Contract? Rong Chen frowned and looked at him with incomprehensible eyes. I don't know what contract you made, it has nothing to do with me, but when my War King will arrive, I don't need to report to you in advance. As the overlord of the world, it is an honor for Dongling to send envoys to any country. It is not an exaggeration for His Majesty the Emperor to personally come out of the city to welcome him. How dare you doubt it? Chu Tianqiu's expression changed due to his retort, and he was about to get angry when he heard Chu Qinghuang say, when will the War King arrive? Rong Chen turned to look at the girl who was speaking, was slightly startled, and then replied, we will arrive early tomorrow morning. Chu Qinghuang hummed and didn't ask any more questions. Your Majesty the Emperor. Rong Chen stood in the main hall, his posture tall and straight, his brows filled with the unique heroic spirit of a martial artist. The young general is riding alone, riding hard to deliver the document. Please read it to the emperor. The emperor quickly said, Chen Hai. In response, Chen Hai quickly walked down the palace steps, took the document from Rong Chen, turned back to the emperor, and respectfully presented it to him with both hands. The emperor opened the document and looked at it carefully, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. It is indeed a document signed by Emperor Dongling himself. As soon as the words fell, the expressions of Chu Tianqiu and Qin Qiaju suddenly changed, and the blood faded from their faces, as if all their strength had been drained from their bodies in an instant. I dare to ask this General Wen Xingyuan, as the Secretary of the Ministry of Household Affairs, is most concerned about whether this year's treasury will pay such a large sum of money as a tribute. I wonder whether the arrival of the War King and the envoys is for the sake of diplomatic relations between the two countries, or whether it is for the sake of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Rong Chen said, Young General will only act according to the will of our emperor. The specific matters will have to wait until the War King comes. He gave a watertight answer, obviously not intending to tell them the answer in advance. The emperor quickly issued an order, the Minister of Rights. I'm here. You and Chen Hai are responsible for arranging tomorrow's palace banquet. I want to entertain the distinguished guests from Dongling in a grand manner. There must be no neglect. I obey the decree. General Rong, you. The emperor was about to say something when his expression suddenly paused and he looked at him hesitantly. General's surname is Rong. The former regent of Dongling was named Rong. Is this general also named Rong? Is this a coincidence? Rong Chen said calmly, my father served as the bodyguard of the regent when he was young. The young general has been studying with my emperor since he was a child. He received the grace of the regent and gave him the surname Rong. The emperor knew it, but he didn't expect that this general had a lot of background. The retired regent of Dongling was unparalleled in the world for his great achievements, noble status, powerful abilities, and cold temper. To be given a surname by him, only the closest subordinates can have this honor. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 263. The sky is vast. The emperor turned his eyes and said, after lunch today, you will take people out of the city to meet the Dongling War King. Chu Tianqiu was stunned for a moment. After lunch. Go out of the city and wait in advance to show your sincerity, the emperor said decisively. You are my legitimate son, so it is appropriate for me to greet the envoy on my behalf. Hearing this, Chu Tianqiu suddenly felt a glimmer of hope in his heart. Did his father ask him to make up for the losses after losing the contract gambling? Yes, he quickly agreed. My son will definitely live up to his father's expectations. General Rong, please follow me to the imperial study to discuss matters. I have some questions to ask. The emperor looked at Rong Chen. His attitude was particularly gentle and enthusiastic. I will not delay General Rong for too long. After the discussion, I will order someone to arrange for General Rong resting place. Rong Chen nodded. It's an honor for the young general. Retreat. Best regards, Your Majesty. Long live my emperor. Chu Qinghuang turned around, glanced across Rong Chen's face, and turned away calmly. Rong Chen turned his head silently and looked at the girl's leaving figure, his eyebrows slightly twisted in thought. Seventh sister Chu Tianqiu chased out quickly, and soon followed Chu Qinghuang. His tone of voice became more flattering. I didn't expect that the Dongling envoy actually came. Look at this, the contract has just been finalized and has not yet warmed up. Can you just regard it as brother's temporary hot-headedness? Seventh sister has a broad mind and will definitely not be serious with me. No, Chu Qinghuang calmly interrupted him, I am narrow-minded and like to be serious with others. Chu Tianqiu's face froze. 3 days. Chu Qinghuang raised 3 fingers. Although the Dongling envoy arrived 2 days in advance, I still want you to be the prince for 3 more days. After 3 days, you will fulfill the bet. Second emperor brother, be mentally prepared. After saying this, she walked away. Chu Tianqiu's steps froze, and his face quickly became covered with a layer of gloom. He stared at Chu Qinghuang's leaving back and didn't speak for a long time. Your Highness, Uncle Qin came over. What should we do? Chu Tianqiu said coldly, there must be something fishy in this. That's what I thought. Uncle Qin nodded. As soon as we signed the contract, the envoy from Dongling arrived. This is a ridiculous coincidence. Chu Tianqiu thought deeply for a moment. Is that Rong Chen fake? Your Highness suspects that the eldest princess has arranged for a fake Dongling envoy. There's nothing she can't do, Chu Tianqiu said in a cold voice. The spies I sent out last night haven't come back yet. We're not yet sure if there are any changes on the road. We can only wait for now. According to the itinerary mentioned by Rong Chen, Dongling War King will arrive tomorrow. Even if spies are sent to check their whereabouts now, there will be no other countermeasures than wasting time. Uncle Qin said, if both the emperor and Chu Qinghuang accept the contract, what should we do? Chu Tianqiu said nothing. He didn't know what to do either. The murderous intention in his heart flashed away, and he thought coldly that if his prince was really demoted, the only way would be to get rid of Chu Qinghuang. But how could Chu Qinghuang be eliminated so easily? For the courtiers, it was a thrilling half-day. Chu Tianqiu and Qin Qiuaju felt half-hearted, but with the last glimmer of hope, they selected the manpower to greet the envoy from the palace. Chu Qinghuang acted like a normal person. After leaving the palace, he took Fukang shopping. They visited the Mo Beizai and the Pearl and Jade Pavilion, and bought Fukang a high-quality sapphire hairpin and 2 jade pendants of excellent quality. The clothes and boots tailor-made for Fukang and Hongyu in the palace have been delivered to the eldest princess's residence. However, due to Fukang's special status, he cannot use royal standard accessories, so it will take some time for Chu Qinghuang to get the accessories. Today, Chu Qinghuang took advantage of her free time to take him out and buy 2 jade pendants that an ordinary young man could wear. After returning home, Chu Qinghuang asked Fukang to bring over several sets of clothes and try them on one by one. They matched them with the jade pendant and hairpin she had just bought. The black ones were calm and cold, and the white ones were pure and refined, which made the young man look outstanding and his features picturesque. Chu Qinghuang just sat in front of the window and watched, his lazy eyes filled with appreciation and satisfaction. Not bad. Fukang felt a little embarrassed. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, go and look in the mirror. Yes, Fukang responded softly, turned around and walked to the bronze mirror. Looking at his luxurious attire in the mirror, his expression was blank for a moment, as if he didn't know who the person in the mirror was, and he felt like a complete stranger. Master. Chu Qinghuang's voice was lazy. Huh. This subordinate feels it's a bit strange. Fukang stared at the mirror again, and for a moment, his eyes quietly looked at Chu Qinghuang. I don't look like a shadow guard in these clothes. Although he often wore robes during this period, this was the first time he looked at himself in the mirror, and he felt a little uncomfortable. Influence you to take action. Fukang thought for a moment and slowly shook his head, probably not. But if you need to perform more special tasks, then simple jinyi will naturally be more convenient. Since you don't know how, just wear it like this. Chu Qinghuang held her chin, and her voice became a little lazier. But you don't think it looks like a shadow guard, so what does it look like? Fukang moved his lips, and his voice was as low as a mosquito. Serve you. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 264. After lunch, the emperor arranged for several officials from the court including Chu Tianqiu, King Zhenbei, Uncle Qin, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, and the 2 ministers of the Ministry of Rites. Under the escort of Chu Xuanyi and 2,000 imperial guards, they arrived at noon. After the meal, he left the palace and headed outside the imperial city. This battle is not small. There are royal sons, vassal kings, imperial guard commanders, several civil servants, and Uncle Qin, a relative of the emperor. They will definitely welcome the distinguished guests from Dongling with the greatest etiquette. Rong Chen was left by the emperor to talk in the royal study. After the conversation, he had a sumptuous and delicious meal. After eating and drinking, he was served by the chamberlain appointed by the emperor and went to rest. He rode hard all night alone, but he was exhausted. After washing, he fell asleep and slept until the sun went down. From the beginning to the end, he didn't worry at all that someone would take the opportunity to assassinate him. After waking up, I was naturally entertained with good wine and good food. As a distinguished guest from Dongling, let alone General Zhou, he is just an ordinary young man from aristocratic family, and no one would dare to neglect him. After dinner, he was invited over again by the emperor. At this time, Chu Tianqiu and King Zhenbei led the officials to arrive outside the imperial city. They waited under the hot sun from afternoon to evening, and from evening until darkness fell. The emperor asked us to come out and wait at noon, but the war king of Dongling will not arrive until early tomorrow morning. Is it possible that we will just wait here until tomorrow morning? Uncle Qin frowned. He was obviously extremely dissatisfied, but he was afraid of the presence of the imperial guards. Dare to show it on his face, His Royal Highness King Xian, should we go forward to greet him? How can adults withstand the fatigue of traveling at such an age? Chu Tianqiu turned to look at the several officials from the DPRK and central government who came out in carriages, and said calmly, "Forget it, we will wait here." Officials who are said to be young have also suffered this time, not because it is hard to wait here, but because the weather is hot. They are all officials who are used to enjoying life. They go to court at 3 o'clock and one line every day. Go to the various ministries and offices, and go home. On weekdays, all the officials went home early after the court, ate ice-cold fruits and enjoyed the service of the servants. They even washed their feet and were cared for by maids. How could it be like today, when they would go out of the city after noon and stand in the hot sun? The sun made everyone dizzy, mouth dry, and finally stayed up until the sun went down in the evening, but the buzzing mosquitoes came out again, making everyone miserable. Do you think the Dongling envoy will really come? Uncle Qin turned to look at several officials and said casually, "I always feel that this is unreliable." The officials waiting on the side looked at each other in confusion. General Rong said he would come soon. Chu Xuanyi sat upright on the horse, wearing a black robe that blended in with the night. "Uncle Qin, don't be too anxious." A basin of light cold water was poured down, directly extinguishing the glimmer of hope that Uncle Qin Guo refused to give up. Uncle Qin looked at Chu Xuanyi with a calm expression. "Prince Yi seems to be looking forward to the arrival of the Dongling envoy." "We are indeed looking forward to it." Chu Xuanyi did not deny it. "Only when the envoy from Dongling comes, it is possible to avoid paying tribute this year. If he does not come, there will be no hope at all. At present, the national treasury is not sufficient. Is it possible for Uncle Qin to do it? Are you going to spend this large sum of money out of your own pocket?" Uncle Qin snorted coldly. "Even if the Dongling envoy does come, he may not be exempted from today's annual tribute." Chu Xuanyi was too lazy to argue with him. "Xianyi, do you want the guards to set up some tents?" Chu Tianqiu was a little anxious because of the mosquitoes. He kept slapping the areas that were targeted by the mosquitoes. "There are too many mosquitoes. We can't go on like this." It was noon when they came out, and they didn't expect to be bitten by mosquitoes at night. Going back to the palace to get mosquito-repellent incense now would only make them look more squeamish. Chu Xuanyi didn't even frown and sat firmly. This can show Ziki's sincerity. Chu Tianqiu's face darkened. and anger arose spontaneously. Uncle Qin frowned. Why is Prince Yi talking to His Highness King Xian in such an attitude? Chu Xuanyi glanced at him. If Uncle Qin wants to put up a tent, he can do it himself. He is responsible for protecting King Xian and all the gentlemen. His duty is only to protect the safety of all the gentlemen. He is not responsible for other matters. You. Okay, Chu Tianqiu said coldly, no need to say anything more. Can't we just wait until tomorrow morning? If we can't bear this little hardship, what else can Father expect from us? So no one spoke anymore, and the group just stood outside the closed city gate, feeling the still hot air at night, enjoying the sour feeling of being bitten by mosquitoes, and listening to the sound of slapping mosquitoes echoing in their ears. It was painful to wait until dawn. Every day seems like a year. Chu Tianqiu and Qin Qiuaju, who had been feeding mosquitoes all night, were in an extremely bad mood. Finally, when they were exhausted and drowsy, they heard a sound. There is the sound of horse hooves. The two of them woke up instantly. The sound of galloping iron hooves came faintly from the east direction and reached my ears. Clatter! 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 A dull sound like thunder broke the early morning silence. King Zhenbei frowned and turned to look at Chu Tianqiu and Uncle Qin. Will he be the envoy of Dongling? The sound is like a cavalry. Chu Tianqiu's expression changed slightly. The envoy's journey should not be so urgent. Although they already knew that the War King of Dongling would come, in addition to the War King, there should be other civil servants following him. The civil servants were weak, so it was impossible for them to gallop along with the War King, right? Chu Xuanyi said nothing. His expression was calm and not alarmed. Yes or no, for now they can only wait. Everyone fell silent. Chu Tianqiu, Qin Qiuaju, the king of Zhenbei, and all the officials and guards present, all fell silent, staring at the direction where the horse hoof sounds came from without saying a word. Heartbeats like thunder. Duh. 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 The horse hoof sounds were getting closer and closer, and the sound was getting clearer and clearer, like thunder, making people's hearts unconsciously lift up. If it is really the Dongling envoy, he should have brought a lot of people this time. The king of Zhenbei looked solemn, and judging from the sound of the iron cavalry, there are at least 10,000 people, and they are not ordinary guards at all. Chu Tianqiu's face suddenly changed. The king of Zhenbei means 10,000 iron cavalry. The king of Zhenbei nodded. What does Dongling want to do? The minister of personnel, who had been waiting all night and was already mentally exhausted, showed a look of surprise. Is he trying to take advantage of the opportunity to do something? The iron hoof sounds were getting closer and closer. Chu Tianqiu didn't say anything, but kept praying in his heart that it was not the Dongling envoy, not the Dongling envoy. It was a little closer. It was so close that he could see the dust raised by the iron cavalry when they galloped. Here they come. Chu Tianqiu calmed down and stared at the cavalry corps that was getting closer and closer. Huh! A man and a horse came into view first. A white horse, a brocade white robe. The young man sitting on the horse had a handsome and eye-catching appearance and a tall and straight figure. Even the stunning white robe could not hide the extraordinary demeanor that emanated from his body as he galloped over. It seemed that even the brightest sunlight could not cover up the radiance on him. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 265. Behind the man, 8 riders followed closely. The uniformly brown horses and black robes, the uniform pace and speed, and the well-trained momentum are intimidating. The formation of guards stationed outside the city gate and hundreds of officials waiting was obviously unexpected. The man in white robe who was galloping in the wind saw the scene from a distance. His pupils narrowed slightly and he held the reins in both hands to slow down his galloping speed. 8 riders were riding behind him. It slowed down for a while. Even at the critical moment, he did not get even half a step past the white horse due to inertia. The man on the white horse at the head was about 25 or 6 years old. He had slender eyebrows and phoenix eyes. He was as handsome as fire. He had accumulated a strong bearing and pressure because he had led troops all year round. Even though that face is stunningly beautiful, you can't ignore the overwhelming feeling of oppression around you. The white horse soon arrived. "Are you all waiting for me?" The man reined in his horse and stopped, raising his eyebrows as he looked at the tired faces in front of him. His voice was leisurely, "You all don't look very good. Could it be that you haven't slept all night? Have you been waiting here early?" Chu Tianqiu composed himself. "Your Excellency, are you from Dongling?" The man in white robe nodded. "My king's general Zhou should have sent the news to the palace." Chu Tianqiu's voice was dry. "So, you are Dongling's most brave and skilled general, His Royal Highness the War King." The man in white robe glanced at him and didn't take it to heart. This king is indeed Xianyuan Rongzhan. Chu Tianqiu's face turned pale, and the last hope in his heart was finally shattered. "What?" Xianyuan Rongzhan narrowed his eyes. "Your Excellency doesn't seem to welcome me." Chu Tianqiu was startled and quickly raised a smile. "How could it be? I have only admired the name of the War King for a long time, and I have always admired him. Suddenly I was too excited when I saw him, so I lost my composure. I still look forward to the War King. Forgive me." Xianyuan Rongzhan nodded lightly. "Let's take what you said as true." Chu Tianqiu's smile was a little unnatural. "What did you call yourself just now?" Xianyuan Rongzhan raised his eyebrows. "My king. Are you the Prince of Ziki?" Chu Tianqiu nodded quickly. "I am the current second prince, titled Prince Xian, and the legitimate son of the queen. There is no need to introduce him in such detail. I have no interest in you." It was as if he was not his legitimate son. Chu Tianqiu's smile suddenly froze. Xianyuan Rongzhan ignored him and turned to look at the Ziki officials standing in a row in front of him. They all looked pale and tired. The dark shadows were particularly obvious under their eyes. Mosquitoes were staring at them all over their faces. They looked as funny as they could be. "How funny?" Xianyuan Rongzhan's eyes were a little subtle. "Did you really wait all night?" King Zhenbei said, "Diangling is an honored guest, so we should wait all night." "It's because I didn't think carefully," Xianyuan Rongzhan said with excellent demeanor. "I and the soldiers originally arrived in the eastern suburbs last night." King Zhenbei paused. "However, I thought that my sons had a hard time traveling, so I set up a tent in the eastern suburbs to rest for one night." Xianyuan Rongzhan's tone was particularly sincere. "If I had known that you were waiting here, I would have come to meet you last night, instead of making you wait so long. After all, the eastern suburbs are only 30 miles away." Ziki officials. Is it necessary to say this? Are you really sorry, or are you deliberately poking their guts? They worked hard here for half a day yesterday afternoon and fed mosquitoes all night, but the Tanglin envoy slept happily all night in the eastern suburbs, only 30 miles away. If I had known they were going to greet them, wouldn't I have been able to meet them earlier? All the adults were in extremely complicated moods and turned to look at King Xian and Uncle Qin in unison. Uncle Qin clearly proposed to greet the envoy last night, but King Xian did not agree, so they spent the night feeding mosquitoes here, exhausted both physically and mentally. Chu Tianqiu was also annoyed. He was also the one who fed the mosquitoes last night. Okay. Automatically ignoring the glances from everyone, Chu Tianqiu adjusted his mood and quickly put on a warm smile. "How about we go into the city now?" "Don't be in a hurry." Xianyuan Rongzhan turned around and pointed. "This king came to Ziki with 10,000 cavalry. Now I don't know how to arrange these soldiers. Let's go directly to the city." The maroon horse came slowly, with a middle-aged man with a handsome and noble appearance sitting on the horse's back. If you just look at his appearance, the man seems to be in his 30s, but the demeanor settled between his eyebrows and eyes is steady, deep, and unfathomable, making him look like he is in his 40s. It was impossible to see through his true age for a moment. Chu Tianqiu said, "This is." Xianyuan Rongzhan said in a calm tone, "King Rong introduced me that this person is the most respected and trusted by our emperor in Dongling, the most powerful first-class minister of the current dynasty, Mr. Xiejingxi." "That's what the king of war said." Xiejin smiled slightly, "The person the emperor trusts most is obviously you. How can you not be a bad old man like me?" You may not believe it, but a man who is clearly no longer young smiles like this, but he can still catch the fleeting glory that has passed in the corner of his eyebrows, making people unable to help but feel lost for a moment. Bad old man? The Ziki official had a strange expression. If such a handsome and profound man turns out to be an old man, will those of them who have already stepped into the coffin become old monsters? However, this question is obviously not important. The important thing is that Dongling not only has a war king, but also a chief assistant. Isn't this battle a bit big? Is it necessary to dispatch a chief assistant when traveling to other countries? $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 266. Chu Tianqiu looked at the cavalry army standing not far away. The men and horses were united, standing silently between heaven and earth. Silent and silent, this silent but frightening momentum has already made people unable to restrain themselves from fear, and it is also possible to glimpse the tip of the iceberg of Dongling's powerful strength. The king of Zhenbei hesitated. What does Lord Chief Assistant mean? Are these 10,000 cavalry going to enter the imperial city? Xiejin raised his eyebrows. No. Of course not. Once such a powerful cavalry enters the imperial city, what will be the consequences? You know it if you think about it. Not to mention what would happen to Ziki's subjects, even if 10,000 cavalry wanted to break into the palace and force the emperor to abdicate, they could do it. How could they agree? My king's soldiers will not enter the city for now. They can be placed in your country's military camp. Xianyuan Rongzhan was very graceful and did not intend to overwhelm them when he came up. I just don't know who in your country can be responsible for this. Chu Tianqiu was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Zishan is where the Silver Armor Army's military camp is located. Now the military power of the Silver Armor Army is in the hands of the eldest princess. Well, the eldest princess is my seventh sister, so this matter has to be decided by her. Responsible. The city gate had been opened half an hour ago. Chu Tianqiu got on his horse and respectfully asked the war king to go ahead, chatting with him as he walked. Xiejin rode behind him, and walking alongside him was the king of Zhenbei. The eldest princess of Ziki, Xianyuan Rongzhan raised his eyebrows slightly. I heard that this princess is violent and capricious, and she also has many male pets. Chu Tianqiu nodded. Seventh sister is indeed deviant. She does all the things that women are not allowed to do nowadays. She doesn't care about the rules and ethics at all, which makes the war king laugh. How many male favorites does she have in her house? Chu Tianqiu frowned, with a hint of disgust on his expression. There are 5 of them in total. It's indeed a bit outrageous. Xianyuan Rongzhan clicked his tongue. How can the emperor of your country tolerate this? Father can't help it. After all, she is his own daughter. Father loves her after all. Chu Tianqiu sighed, seemingly helpless. It's just that Kamei is really shameless. She has caused chaos in the court during this period. It's a mess, and everyone is complaining. Xianyuan Rongzhan was slightly surprised. a woman who caused public outrage can actually be named the eldest princess. Chu Tianqiu smiled bitterly, who says it's not the case. As far as I know, this eldest princess is extremely talented. She was born with brute strength, excellent martial arts talent, and has a strong character. She doesn't take secular ethics and ethics in her eyes. She goes her own way. She is a rare and strange woman, Xiejin said casually. This woman is deeply affectionate to me. Chu Tianqiu's expression froze. Strange woman? Xianyuan Rongzhan smiled lightly. Uncle Jin doesn't like people who are bound by ethics. It's normal to like the eldest princess's temper. The air seemed to become quiet for a moment. A trace of embarrassment, annoyance, and uneasiness flashed across Chu Tianqiu's face. He suddenly remembered who the Xiejin was. Over the years, Ziki's national power has not been as good as Dongling. Every year, special people send tribute gifts. After returning from a long journey, there are always officials telling some things about Dongling. This Lord Xiejingxi can almost be said to be a man of Dongling. His father was also the chief minister of Dongling at that time, a powerful official with less than 10,000 people. Xiejin is Xie Shaofu's only legitimate son, and he is favored by thousands of people. It is said that he was handsome and dazzling when he was young. Many young girls in the imperial capital fell in love with him, but unfortunately, in the end, he had a passionate love affair with Xianyuan Yao, the son of King Huainan. It goes without saying how much of a sensation the incident caused back then. It is just that such a temper that is not afraid of the secular world, goes its own way, and acts recklessly is simply worse than the eldest princess of Ziki. No wonder he said, "This woman's love is deeply in my heart." A strange feeling vaguely appeared in Chu Tianqiu's heart, but he couldn't put it into words for the moment. He just felt that these two people from Dongling were not so easy to get along with. Although His Royal Highness the War King was not indifferent, and Lord Xie seemed to be easy to talk to, Chu Tianqiu was unable to resist the feeling of being hidden in something. So he could only change the topic. His Royal Highness the War King suddenly came to Ziki, but he came for the sake of diplomatic relations between the two countries. A full force of 10,000 cavalry troops arrived in Ziki, but the spies from Prince Xian's palace and Uncle Qin's palace did not get any news. What went wrong in this? Diplomatic relations, Rongzhan sneered. It's just a Ziki that I can destroy with my bare hands. Why do I need to make this trip myself just for the sake of diplomatic relations? Chu Tianqiu's expression suddenly froze, and he laughed dryly. I didn't expect His Highness the War King to like joking so much. From what words did you hear that this king was joking? Xianyuan Ronzan's eyes were indifferent. Don't you think that this king can destroy Ziki with just a finger? Chu Tianqiu's face turned red and he almost broke out in cold sweat. Zhan, War King. His Royal Highness the King of War Xiejinyu reminded him casually. Before leaving, the Emperor asked you to be humble, be kind to others, and not to fight and kill at every turn. Have you forgotten? Xianyuan Rongzhan frowned. I only said that Ziki can be destroyed with a snap of his fingers, but he did not say that Ziki must be destroyed. Chu Tianqiu soon stopped laughing, and his face turned pale and ugly. He held the reins tightly, his palms were covered with sweat, and he felt that his mentality was about to be broken by Xianyuan Rongzhan and Xiejin. Did they do it on purpose? $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 267. Chu Tianqiu didn't dare to speak easily anymore, he just felt that this journey had made him unbearable. Dongling Zanwang's words showed his disdain for him, and he was just asking for trouble if he continued to build friendship. His Royal Highness King Xian was stunned. Uncle Qin, King Zhenbei and other officials naturally did not dare to speak without permission. They finally figured out that Dongling War King's visit to Ziki was not necessarily malicious, but he was definitely not here for the sake of friendship between the two countries. The prince and chief minister of the Dongling powerful kingdom seemed to be easy to talk to, but after a few words of conversation, they can make people speechless and feel weak. And even if you feel uncomfortable, you have to endure it and never dare to talk back. The mighty people from the two countries were silent all the way, awkwardly walking slowly towards the palace. The emperor and other officials were waiting at the entrance of the palace. When he saw the envoy's team getting closer and closer, the expression on his face became more and more friendly. His eyes fell on the man in white horse and brocade robes, and there was a look of admiration in his eyes. Dongling is a place of outstanding people. As expected, there are many talented people. I dare not take it. Qian Yuanrong stood up and dismounted with a calm tone. I heard that the eldest princess of Ziki, who is only 15 years old, is very powerful in martial arts and has the courage to crush men. I admire her deeply and can't wait to see her. I want to meet this eldest princess. When the emperor heard this, the smile on his face became more and more cheerful, as if he was honored. Qing Huang is indeed my good daughter. Qian Yuanrong's expression paused. His good daughter? Drinks have been prepared in the palace. Please come to the palace with your highness the king of war, and I will help you to wash away the dust. After the emperor finished speaking, he turned around and ordered, let the eldest princess enter the palace. Chen Hai immediately ordered people to deliver the order. Qian Yuanrong said nothing, and turned to look at Xie, both of them with enigmatic expressions. War King please. Qian Yuanrong still had the etiquette that he should have. He raised his hand and said, Your Majesty, please go first. He had a humble attitude and thoughtful etiquette, and successfully made His Majesty the Emperor feel a little at ease. He secretly thought that perhaps the visit of the Dongling envoy would indeed help maintain the friendly relations between the two countries. Maybe Qing Huang was right. But having said that, how did Qing Huang do it? The emperor couldn't help but have doubts in his heart. She has not left the imperial city in 3 months, how could she get Dongling War King to come in person? Is it possible that she has foresight? Your Royal Highness, the eldest princess, is 15 years old. Qian Yuanrong suddenly spoke, interrupting the emperor's thoughts. His Majesty the Emperor smiled and nodded, yes, my daughter is really my caring little cotton-padded jacket. She has solved a lot of troubles for me recently. Qian Yuanrong chuckled and said without comment, does the Emperor have any intention of marrying the eldest princess? Chu Tianqiu, who was following behind, was shocked when he heard this. The Dongling War King had taken a liking to Chu Qinghuang. If he really has this idea. Marriage, the Emperor's face changed slightly, and then he said with a smile, my daughter is still young, so I have not thought about her marriage for the time being. Qian Yuanrong said calmly, when you are placed in an ordinary family at the age of 15, you are already at the age of leaving the cabinet. The emperor composed himself and maintained his composure. To be honest with the king of war, I have no intention of letting Qing Huang marry far away. What a joke, his Ziki is currently supported by Qing Huang, so let her marry in another country. Who will he count on in the future? Counting on those few useless things. However, His Majesty the Emperor really did not dare to refute Dongling War King's face. He hesitated for a moment and thought of a remedy. Besides Qing Huang, I also have a 6th princess who has not yet left the palace. If His Highness, War King, intends to marry. I just said it casually. Qian Yuanrong raised his lips, his tone was casual and careless, and there was no seriousness about talking about political affairs. Your Majesty, don't take it to heart. The Emperor was a little embarrassed. Whether the other party just said it casually or they really had the idea of marriage, it was obvious at this time that they were only interested in the eldest princess Qing Huang and had no interest in getting to know the 6th princess. The palace banquet has been prepared. The monarchs and ministers of the Western Qi dynasty gathered around the distinguished guests from Dongling and sat down in the palace. Today was a feast, so entertaining distinguished guests from other countries was naturally extra grand. The emperor requested that all adult princes attend. The eldest prince Chu Tianling, King Xian Chu Tianqiu, the third prince Chu Tianyin who was imprisoned, and even the fifth prince Chu Tianzheng who had not recovered from his injuries were also called over. Xianyuan Rongzhan and Xiejin were respectfully treated as honored guests. After they sat down, the other envoys from Dongling sat down one by one under Xiejin according to their status and rank. Naturally, warm and polite greetings followed. The emperor personally toasted to Rongzhan and Xiejin, "I am deeply honored to have this distinguished guest come from afar. Your Majesty the emperor is so polite." Rongzhan drank the wine and put down the cup. "I am here on the order of my brother because I have something I want to discuss with His Majesty the Emperor." His Majesty the Emperor perked up and said quickly, "What instructions does His Majesty the Emperor Dongling have? I am all ears." Xianyuan Rongzhan was about to say something, but his eyes suddenly turned and he frowned at the row of officials diagonally opposite. "My lords, you have worked hard all night waiting for me outside the imperial city last night. You look exhausted. Why don't you first let them go back to rest?" As soon as these words came out, all the officials including Chu Tianqiu, King Zhenbei and Qin Qiuaju were all shocked. Then Qin Qiuaju said, "It is the duty of ministers to relieve the emperor's worries and troubles. We welcome distinguished guests outside the imperial city. It represents Ziki's sincerity, not to mention hard work. Thank you for your consideration, His Royal Highness." Chu Tianqiu said, "It is my honor to be able to greet His Royal Highness the War King in person. I dare not express my sorrow." Other ministers nodded in agreement, saying it was not hard work. However, the truth is that their bodies are now so weak and their eyes are so dry that they can hardly open them. They can still cheer up when walking. But when they sit down, their upper and lower eyelids are fighting, and they wish they could lie down on the spot and fall asleep. However, just go back and rest? Of course it's impossible. Dongling distinguished guests have only come here once in decades. They must perform well in front of His Majesty the Emperor and the distinguished guests. How can they say they are tired easily? Ha Xiejin held the cup and smiled, with an elegant and kind look on his face. Ziki is united as one, His Majesty the Emperor is full of sincerity, and the ministers are all physically strong. This atmosphere is really admirable. Upon hearing this, the Dongling envoys nodded unanimously. "Your Excellency, the first assistant is right." Xiejin tilted his head and said calmly, "We have already arrived in Ziki, so you don't need to flatter me anymore. Leave some opportunities for others." As soon as these words were spoken, the hall fell into an eerie silence. "Master Xie is really good at joking." Uncle Qin laughed and quickly said to break the awkward atmosphere, "I heard that Master Xie was a well-known handsome man in Dongling when he was a boy. He was both civil and military, and could do anything dash." "Uncle Qin is wrong in what he said." Xiejin interrupted him unhurriedly, "You said that I am a handsome man who is well known in Dongling. This is true. It is also true that I am both civil and military, but I cannot bear the words omnipotent." Uncle Qin Guo slapped the horse's leg with his flattery, smiled coquettishly, and was about to say something to make up for it, when suddenly a voice sounded outside. "The eldest princess has arrived." The hall became quiet again. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 268. Under the gaze of nearly 100 people from the Dongling and Ziki countries, Chu Qinghuang, wearing a crimson-waisted long skirt, walked in from outside the palace. Against the light, the whole person seemed to be shrouded in a halo. The girl's face was a little too beautiful to be real. The phoenix pattern embroidered with gold thread on the skirt reflected a dazzling luster in the sun. It made people feel noble and inviolable for no reason. Xianyuan Rongzhan raised his eyes slightly, his eyes fell on the girl's face, his eyes were fine, and he nodded casually. This face was not bad, and it did not wrong his little sister's peerless face. There was also a slender and delicate young man beside her. He looked about 17 or 18 years old. Although he wore a black robe with dark satin embroidery, he looked like a noble young man. However, the other party's restrained and dull demeanor and the temperament of hiding his sharpness made Rongzhan see through the identity of this young man at a glance. Walking to the hall, Chu Qinghuang casually glanced at the people sitting on both sides of the hall. There was no need to look closely at Ziki, just a quick glance. The focus was on the distinguished guests from Dongling. Chu Qinghuang's eyes turned slightly, and soon met Xianyuan Rongzhan's warm and smiling eyes. She paused slightly. Fortunately, she did not show a touch of being moved by a long-lost reunion. Otherwise, she would not know how to respond. Then she saw Xiejin's elegant and noble face, which was still very charming even after he was over 40 years old. In addition to becoming more and more mature, his demeanor between his eyebrows became more and more calm and deep, and his handsome charm did not diminish at all. "Is this the eldest princess?" Xiejin raised his eyebrows and spoke in a light voice. Only those who were particularly close to him could hear the warmth in his voice. "Not only does her temperament suit my taste, but her appearance is also first class. It really meets the saying that she is so beautiful that she can make fish sink and geese fall, and she can overturn a country and a city." As soon as the voice fell, the expressions of the ministers of Ziki were instantly complicated and varied. To be honest, the eldest princess is indeed beautiful, but for a long time they have paid more attention to her temper than her appearance. The well-educated noble ladies can still compete to see who is more beautiful and talented, but when it comes to the eldest princess, they are most impressed by her force and violence. After all, who would pay too much attention to the appearance of a woman who often takes servants into the mansion, whips others, and leads troops to confiscate property? Even if Chu Qinghuang is so beautiful that no one can match her, like a goddess from heaven, in the eyes of those whose property has been confiscated and exterminated, they will never think she is so beautiful, but only think she is a fierce and evil spirit. Chu Qinghuang looked at him expressionlessly and led Fukang to the right. "Qinghuang, His Majesty the Emperor said, this is His Royal Highness the War King and the Prime Minister from Dongling." Chu Qinghuang said in a light tone, "I know." "Huh." The Emperor choked and coughed lightly. "Qinghuang, please be polite." Chu Qinghuang sat down in the seat reserved for her on the right, raised her eyes and looked at Xianyuan Rongzhan opposite, holding up the wine cup. "This palace offers a glass to His Royal Highness Prince Zhan." Xianyuan Rongzhan picked up the wine cup and drank it all in one gulp. "On the way here, I heard rumors in Ziki that the eldest princess is a goddess who has descended to the earth and the reincarnation of the emperor." Xianyuan Rongzhan smiled faintly. "I wonder what His Majesty the Emperor of Ziki and the ministers think of this." As soon as these words came out, the hall was quiet again. Chu Tianqiu's face suddenly changed, and he laughed dryly. "Don't believe all rumors." "I'm not talking to you." Xianyuan Rongzhan frowned and glanced at him unhappily. "The emperor hasn't spoken yet, why are you so anxious?" Chu Tianqiu's face froze. Besides, haven't you heard that there is no smoke without fire?" Rongzhan frowned. "The powerful country of Dongling has had 3 female emperors. Does King Xian think that women can't take on important tasks?" I don't mean that." "Then what do you mean?" Xianyuan Rongzhan looked unkind. "You want to be the emperor." Chu Tianqiu's face turned pale, and he quickly stood up and knelt down. "Father, you are wise. I have no such intention." His Majesty the Emperor frowned, his expression unhappy. As the Queen's legitimate son, he has ambitions but dares not admit them, and he is so timid, which is a far cry from Qinghuang. Since King Xian has no intention of being crown prince, why is he so aggressive about the rumors? Xianyuan Rongzhan was puzzled. "Wouldn't it be better for you to be a prince?" King Xian was already at a loss as to how to deal with him, his face was turning pale and blue, and it was embarrassing for everyone to see him. Uncle Qin hurriedly spoke to smooth things over, "Your Highness King Zhan, you don't know that there has never been a woman emperor in Western Qi, so your Highness King Xian thinks the rumors are ridiculous, not that he is dissatisfied with the princess." Rong Zhan snorted, "Before my brother ascended the throne, my mother was the queen of Dongling, and I haven't seen that Dongling is weaker than other countries." The ministers of Western Qi looked at each other. This King Zhan from Dongling seems a bit difficult to deal with. What does he mean? Just because Dongling had a queen doesn't mean that other countries must have queens, although Dongling is indeed strong, it can't forcibly interfere in the internal affairs of other countries, right? Your Highness, the Princess Xianyu and Rongzhan looked up at Chu Qinghuang, "Do you want to be the empress?" Chu Qinghuang nodded nonchalantly, "I do." A stone stirs up 1,000 waves. After these words fell, the ministers of Ziki changed their expressions. Seventh sister, Chu Tianqiu turned to look at her in disbelief. "What did you say?" "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 269. Chu Qinghuang ignored him. "Well," Xianyu and Rongzhan coughed lightly and quickly drew the attention of everyone present, "I haven't finished what I just said. I wonder if the emperor is interested in hearing it." His Majesty the Emperor hurriedly said, "War King, please speak." "This time, I came here on the orders of the Emperor for two things," Xianyu and Rongzhan said unhurriedly. "The first thing is that the Emperor understands that His Majesty the Emperor of Ziki loves his people like a son. The treasury is empty, but the Emperor has never increased taxes on the people, which is commendable. The Emperor considers that annual tribute is a burden to Ziki's treasury, so he is willing to exempt Ziki from future tributes." When His Majesty the Emperor heard this, he was surprised and happy, and glanced at Chu Qinghuang subconsciously. The daughter is indeed her little cotton-padded jacket. His Majesty Dongling Emperor's benevolent heart is deeply appreciated by me. The Emperor picked up the wine cup and said, "This glass of wine is dedicated to His Majesty Dongling Emperor." After saying that, drink it all in one gulp. Chen Hai stepped forward to pour the wine, and the Emperor picked up the wine cup again. "This glass of wine, I respect His Highness the King of War." "I don't dare take it." Rongzhan picked up the wine cup and drank with him. All the civil and military officials in the main hall were also happy. In any case, the elimination of annual tribute can indeed reduce a large burden on the national treasury. The officials couldn't help but glance at the eldest princess secretly. Chu Qinghuang looked calm, as if everything that happened in front of her had nothing to do with her. Only Chu Tianqiu and Qin Qiuaju were not happy. At this point, their bet with Chu Qinghuang had been completely lost. "Your Majesty, please don't be too happy too early. I haven't finished speaking yet." Xianyu and Rongzhan put down his wine cup and sighed quietly. "To be honest, I had one more request when I came here. I hope to get His Majesty the Emperor's consent." The Emperor hurriedly said, "His Royal Highness, King of War, please make it clear that as long as I can do it, I will never refuse. As we all know, the last Empress of Dongling was my mother and the regent was my father. They abdicated more than 10 years ago and traveled around the world. At that time, my sister was still young." Xianyu and Rongzhan said. His expression couldn't help but feel a little sad. Originally, the Emperor planned to let Dongling succeed the Empress after sitting on the throne for 10 years, but something unexpected happened when my little sister was 17. The ministers of Ziki listened quietly, not understanding what he meant. Something happened to the little princess of Dongling? These days, every time I think of my little sister, I and my brother feel very sad. Xianyu and Rongzhan took a sip of wine and looked up at the Emperor. Later, I accidentally learned that there was a girl in Ziki who was only 15 years old. The princess is brave and good at fighting, powerful in martial arts, and has courage and magnanimity that is not inferior to that of a man. Her temperament is so similar to that of our sister. Chu Qing Huang drank tea calmly, with a calm expression, her eyes closed, and she didn't know what she was thinking. So the emperor brother ordered me to be the envoy to Ziki, come and see the little princess, and try my best to support the little princess to become the queen of Ziki. What? The expressions of all the civil and military officials in the main hall changed, and a commotion broke out. This is absolutely impossible. Ziki has never had a queen. This matter is really inappropriate. Your Majesty, please think again. The solemn hall instantly turned into a vegetable market because of Rongzhan's few words. All the officials of 11 Qi turned pale with shock, and the drowsy ministers were instantly shocked to the point of losing their sleep. His Majesty the Emperor ignored the protests of the ministers and glanced across Chu Qinghuang's face, then quickly looked at Rongzhan. Is this really what His Majesty the Emperor Dongling meant? There is no need for me to lie to the Emperor, Rongzhan said calmly. To offend the Emperor, with Dongling's current national strength, even if it annexes Ziki, it is not a problem. However, the Emperor has no intention of fighting, so he wants to do it with Ziki. An ally. The Emperor said nothing. What the Emperor means is that if His Majesty the Emperor can fulfill the wish of the Emperor and His Royal Highness the King of War, not only will this year's annual tribute be waived, but also every year's tribute in the future will be waived, and my Emperor is willing to promise, during Princess Yu's reign, she maintained friendly relations with Ziki. When the Emperor heard this, he couldn't help but look at Chu Qinghuang again. Father Chu Tianquo's face turned pale and he raised his head hurriedly. Father, please think twice about this matter. Chu Tianyan, Chu Tianzheng, and Chu Tianling all left the table and knelt down. Please, Father, think again. The Emperor looked angry and was about to speak. Who is this next to Her Royal Highness the Princess? Xiejin turned his head and looked at the young man next to Chu Qinghuang. He is quite handsome and is one of the male favorites in the princess's house. He changed the topic too quickly. Before the civil and military ministers could protest against the Queen's request made by the King of War, Xiejin turned the topic to a male favorite, making them feel as if they were stuck as soon as they mentioned it. The civil and military officials were stunned for a moment, then turned to look in the direction of the eldest princess. Kneeling next to the eldest princess is a young man in black robe. He has a handsome appearance and outstanding appearance. Even though he is sitting on his knees with lowered eyebrows and eyes, he still gives people a sense of pride and pride. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 270. Everyone looked at Fuekang, and suddenly thought that Her Royal Highness the Princess had gone her own way over the years. Her private life was chaotic, and she never cared about the honor of her daughter's family. Didn't King Dongling have any idea about this? As a man, I probably hate women who don't follow the rules. His name is Fuekang. Chu Qinghuang took a sip of tea and said, my personal bodyguard, not a man's favorite. Xiejin's lips raised slightly. In that case, how about giving him to me? Chu Qinghuang said calmly, no. Why? Xiejin raised his eyebrows, as if he didn't expect to be rejected. The eldest princess is reluctant to part with a mere shadow guard. Chu Qinghuang said, since he is just a shadow guard, is it worthy of Master Xie to ask for it? Xiejin smiled slightly. I have been particularly interested in beautiful boys in recent years. Rongzhan twitched the corner of his mouth and put the teacup to his lips, secretly thinking that if Uncle Yao heard this, he would have to kneel down for a night of gold. Sorry, Chu Qing Huang said calmly, the shadow guards of this palace are not allowed to go out. Xiejin openly negotiated terms with her in front of the ministers of the two countries. We are willing to support Her Royal Highness to become the queen. No need to discuss. His Majesty the Emperor was frightened when he heard this. He was afraid that King Huang's temperament, which no one would look down upon, might offend Dongling's distinguished guests, so he hurriedly tried to persuade him. Qing Huang, you are just a shadow guard. I will give you the secret pavilion. It's up to you to choose the shadow guard. Chu Qing Huang still said two words, no. The expressions of the ministers suddenly changed, and they secretly said that the princess was simply too shameless and did not understand how to put the overall situation first. Although they all disagreed with letting the eldest princess become the queen, the distinguished guest from Dongling only made a small request, so why couldn't it be given to them? Isn't it just a shadow guard? Everyone's attention was quickly diverted, because the eldest princess's rejection was a bit frightening. The four princes who were kneeling in the palace and preparing to make an impassioned speech were ignored at this time. They knelt stiffly like stone sculptures with extremely ugly expressions. Fukang Xiejin's eyes fell on the young man. Come here for a moment. Fukang knelt down and sat behind Chu Qing Huang, with his hands on his knees, his eyebrows slightly lowered and silent. The emperor frowned. Your Royal Highness, the eldest Princess Xiejin asked Fukang not to move, and then stepped back and asked Chu Qing Huang, can you let him come here? Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment, then raised his eyes to look at Xiejin. We should talk about business in the main hall. If Mr. Xie has anything to ask my shadow guard, you can wait until the banquet is over. Begwan took a breath. Her Royal Highness the Princess is so courageous. It's okay to be arrogant and domineering in your own imperial city, but how can you be so rude to the distinguished guests from Dongling? This is the Emperor entertaining envoys from other countries. Why is he so disregarding the overall situation? What if the distinguished guest is unhappy and takes back what he just said? Qing Huang His Majesty the Emperor was frightened, but he did not dare to reprimand him too much. He could only remind you hesitantly, don't be rude to Mr. Xie. Xiejin smiled and said, Your Majesty, there is no need to worry. I like the temperament of the eldest princess. Well? The Emperor smiled awkwardly. My daughter has had her own temper since she was a child. Such a temper is very good. Xiejin's expression was gentle and harmless, and his attitude looked very kind. I also had such a temper when I was young. The Emperor didn't know how to respond for a moment, so he could only pick up the wine cup and decided to take a sip of wine to calm down his shock. Since the King of War is here for the eldest princess, after the banquet is over, we should be able to go to the eldest princess's residence as guests. Xiejin asked warmly, I am very interested in those male favorites of your highness. When the officials heard this, their expressions suddenly became subtle. Are the war kings and chief assistants from Dongling so unruly? Are they interested in Her Royal Highness the eldest princess, or are they interested in Her Royal Highness's backyard male favorite? Didn't we just talk about supporting the eldest princess to ascend the throne? Before they could object righteously, why did they end up in the eldest princess's backyard all of a sudden? Father Chu Tianyan took the initiative to speak, reminding his father that they were still kneeling. Men and women are not allowed to be intimate. The seventh sister's eldest princess's mansion does not have a male master yet, so it should be inconvenient to receive male guests. I have the final say as to whether my palace is inconvenient to receive male guests. Chu Qing Huang looked at him with indifferent eyes. Does the third emperor intend to make the decision for me? Chu Tianyan's face turned green and he was speechless for a moment. As long as Mr. Xie doesn't have any ideas about my shadow guard, you can go if you want. Chu Qing Huang said, the eldest princess's mansion is big enough and has enough courtyards. It doesn't matter if the War King and Mr. Xie live there for a year. Cough. Cough 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 cough. The emperor choked on the wine and coughed until his face turned red. Chen Hai quickly stepped forward and wiped the wine from the corner of the emperor's mouth with a clean handkerchief. The hall was as quiet as snow, and only the emperor's cough could be clearly heard. The expressions of the officials became more and more complicated. Why does the eldest princess speak so openly? Is the mansion big enough? Is this a question of whether the mansion is big or not? Even if the eldest princess's palace is half the size of the palace, it is still a princess's palace, not a prince's palace. The head of the family is a woman, only 15 years old, and has not yet been officially married. Well, even if there was a consort before, he has already been divorced, right? Now that there is no male owner in the princess mansion, how can we allow male guests to stay for a long time at will? Absolutely outrageous. And the Dongling War King supports Her Royal Highness the eldest princess to ascend the throne as emperor. Who knows if they will conspire to ascend to the throne together? I wonder if the emperor agrees to the conditions I proposed. Rongzhan raised his eyes and broke the strange silence. If the emperor is willing to appoint the princess as the heir, Ziki will become more and more prosperous in the next few decades. I hope the emperor will consider it carefully. No need to think about it. The emperor took a deep breath. I agree.